Hello and welcome everyone to our webinar this afternoon to showcase our new and very much anticipated diagnostic assessment tool. My name is Caroline Paul and I'm part of the New South Wales team. Before we get started, in the spirit of reconciliation, Cambridge University Press and Assessment acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and extend all that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. Today, the diagnostics presentation presented by our product manager, VJ, will run for about 20 minutes and then we will go straight to a Q&A session with Scott Halligan, our senior maths publisher, along with David Greenwood, who is part of our New South Wales author team, working alongside Stuart Palmer, and he's also an integral part of the diagnostics content. Just a reminder as well, this webinar will be recorded and sent to all attendees at a later date. So without further ado, let's get started.
Good afternoon everyone, my name is VJ and I'm a product manager here at Cambridge University Press. Today I'm going to do a demo of how the diagnostic feature works. Before we go into the actual demo, I'd like to explain some of the underpinning terminology and content structure that drives our diagnostics feature. This will then empower you to make the most of its capabilities and use it in a way that suits your school. The foundation of our diagnostics feature is a set of what we call mathematical skills. A mathematical skill in this context is, in the view of our authors, the smallest testable unit that allows us to meaningfully measure a student's proficiency as they progress through the mathematics syllabus. The author team have carefully created approximately 200 skills per year level. As you can tell by that number, they are a fair bit more granular than what is contained in the syllabus outcomes. The clearest analogy is that they are very similar to the level of granularity that is covered by a worked example in Cambridge's textbooks. Here are a few examples of the mathematical skills to illustrate. Exploring equivalent expressions. Generalizing number facts with algebra. Finding the range of a single dataset. Finding the mean of a single dataset. Mathematical skills are a way of breaking down both the syllabus and each textbook section into parts that can be tested against, and what this means is that each mathematical skill is common to both the textbook and the syllabus. This allows you to plan a diagnostics assessment program using either the textbook structure or the syllabus as the basis for your planning. We've created two banks of questions, a bank for testing during a unit of learning and a post-test bank for testing at the conclusion of a unit of learning. Each of the mathematical skills have 5 questions per bank. There are 2 easy, 2 medium, and 1 hard question where the difficulty has been determined by our author team. Each of the questions in the first bank has a twin question in the post-test bank. The post-test question has the essence of the question in the first bank, but has been slightly modified so that the student doesn't see the exact same question twice. The value of these question pairs between the 2 banks will become clearer when we go through the demo. Before we jump into the demo, let's explore the concepts of a test family and a unit of learning. A unit of learning is any size collection of topics that you would like to test against. It could be the content covered by 3 weeks of classes, a whole chapter in a textbook, half of a chapter, a whole semester of work, etc. A test family, as the name suggests, is a family of tests that collectively covers a unit of learning. Recognizing the diversity in teaching approaches, a test family can consist of almost any number of tests. You could have a unit of learning that is covered by a single pre-test and then a post-test. Or you could have a test family that could consist of a pre-test, a mid-test, and then a post-test. Or you could test more regularly and have a small test once a week or fortnight, followed by a larger post-test at the end of the unit. Since the post-test questions are drawn from a separate bank, and because the bank is filled with the twins of questions that have been used during a unit of learning, a post-test can be generated automatically, as we'll soon see. Now that we've covered some of the key concepts, let's go straight into the demo. Okay, now I've logged in as a teacher and we are in the resource. the first thing that you should notice is the diagnostics feature in the left-hand menu. This is a self-contained feature, meaning that anything diagnostics related will sit under this feature. There will not be a need for you to jump in and out of this feature to reach anything diagnostic related. When we land in the diagnostics feature, you should notice that there are 4 tabs running across the top. We have the test families, which is where you can create your test families as well as your pre-tests and mid-tests and post-tests. There is the test edit option where you can add questions to your tests. We've also got the assign follow-up work and reports. Now to demonstrate, I'm going to create a test family. So we can click on the add test family button and we can add in a name for our test family, sample family, an optional description. This unit of learning will cover weeks 1 to 2, and we can click on create. Now, as soon as we create that test family, that should be sitting at the very top of your test bank. You should be notified that there are currently no tests in your test family. So what we need to do is we need to click on add test. We can then create our test. We'll have the option to add in the questions now or later. And in this example, we'll create the questions later. And then I'm going to create a second test, which we'll call week 2. But this time we're going to add in the questions now. So we've got a couple of options here. We can either use the manual selection method or the wizard. So for this example, we're going to use the wizard. With the wizard, there are a few steps you need to take to generate a draft version of your test. Now, because we've already included the name and the description, we can skip right to picking our difficulty ratio. I'm going to select a balanced mix. We then need to select how many questions we'd like in our test. I'm going to leave this at 20. And finally, we need to select where we'd like our questions from. As mentioned, mathematical skills belong to both the textbook and the syllabus. So if I'd like to select questions from particular mathematical skills, I can drill down the textbook, select the mathematical skills this way. Alternatively, I can click on the syllabus, drill down the strand, and then eventually we will get to the mathematical skills as well. At this point, I've got the option to view all of the questions that have been added into my draft test. So we can click on the expand and view the question in its entirety. We've also got the option to see the question difficulty level, where it belongs in the syllabus, as well as the mathematical skill. I can now search and individually add for questions. I've got the option to search by the textbook and the curriculum again. I can then click on the add button, which will add the questions to my draft version of the test on the right hand side of the screen. If I'd like to rearrange the order of the test, I've got that option. When I'm happy with it, I can click on save. A new feature that we've also added in is the ability to see what skill coverage we have in our test. So we can see all of the skills, either by the textbook or the curriculum, and show you what skills have been covered and which ones haven't. If I'd like to complete this skill coverage, I can click on this shortcut and add a question in from here. We can then save our test, and we can now go back to our test families. So the test that we've just created is sitting right here. As you can see, there are 20 questions in this test. Now, our options with this test, all we need to do is check the box next to the test name, and some options will appear at the very bottom of the screen. So we can assign it to our students online, we can make a copy of the test and randomize the question order of the copy. We can share our test with any of the teachers in our school. We can archive our test. We can also print out our test, which will export it as a PDF, as well as the answer key. I'm just going to assign it to my students online. So we can click on assign, We then need to choose the format of that test, whether it's one sitting or multiple. We can put in a start date as well as an end date. We can then put in an optional message, and then we can assign it to our classes. I've now logged in as a student, so students should immediately see that they've got a notification to complete a test. Alternatively, they can look at the My To-Do list and see that the test is sitting there waiting for them to commence. We can click on Start. Questions are presented to the student one at a time. They've got the option to answer the questions by clicking on the radio button, or they can click on I don't know, which will be reflected in the reports later. They'll need to progress through all the questions and then click Submit. I have now returned to my teacher account, and what I'd like to demonstrate is how we can view the results for the pre/mid test and assign follow-up work based on their results. The first thing we need to do is click on the Assign Follow-up Work tab. This will show me every test that I've assigned to my students. It'll highlight the percentage completed, the average mark, and then the option to view results and set follow-up work. So I'm going to select this one. This will give me a table of results of how my students have performed for each of the mathematical skills. I have the option to filter out students, filter out the question difficulty, view the results either by the textbook or the curriculum, and average their results. At this point, I have the option to manually select which mathematical skills my students need to follow up on. I can do this by checking the box for each student against each mathematical skill. Alternatively, we can use the wizard and set a limit of skills that we can assign to our students, click on Generate, and an algorithm will happen in the background where it will select the skills that the students need to complete. I can then click on Confirm, and this will give me a summary of what I'm going to assign to my students. So if we open up each of these students, it'll specify exactly what the students are going to receive, which mathematical skills, the sections they need to revise, specific worked examples, specific Now You Tries, and specific questions from the exercises. I have the option to add in a class comment. We can put in a due date, and we can also apply individual comments. When we are happy with our selection, we can click on Assign. Now that the follow-up work has been assigned, I've logged back in as a student. Students should be able to view follow-up work in the My To-Do list, which you can see here, as well as the follow-up work in the side menu just over here. When we go to the follow-up work home, you should be able to see all the sets of work that your teacher has assigned to you. We can then click on View Feedback, and this will highlight all the skills that were covered in the test, as well as the skills I can do well, skills I need to improve on, and skills I haven't shown I can do. You can view the teacher comments, whether it's a class comment or an individual comment, and then the specific work the student needs to complete. Students have the option to add in a plan of action, and then they can also print this out or export it as a PDF. We've also implemented a widget which will be pinned to the side menu of the nav so that students don't need to go back and forth between the lesson content and the follow-up work home. This will point students to exactly where they need to go. Okay, now let's just assume enough time has passed that my students have completed their follow-up work. What I would like to do now is generate a post-test and assign it to my students. All I need to do is locate the Generate Post-Test button for my test family. So we just go over here, we can click on the button, we can add in an optional name, an optional description. We can then click on Generate. And what will happen is we'll create a post-test based on the pre-test questions from our pre/mid tests, but it'll draw the questions from the post-test bank. What we can do then is we can choose to assign it to our students online. We then need to choose the format. We can apply a start and end date. Add in an optional message. Then assign it to our classes and click Assign. Again, we're now going to assume that the students have already completed the post-test so that our reports are readily available. So now let's cross over to the reporting feature. In the reporting feature, we have 6 types of reports. We have results by question, results by skill, test comparison, performance by student, score versus time taken, and growth versus attainment. Each of the reports will allow you to select a test family, refine the test list that's in your report, as well as an additional set of filters per report. So let's look at report 1, results by question. Now that I've selected the report type, we need to select the test family. We then have the ability to deselect any of the pre-tests that are allocated to the test family as well as the post-test. We can click on Generate, and a table of results will appear at the bottom just over here. So this will highlight every student's response to each of the questions in the pre, mid, and post tests. You've got the option to filter by class if you've assigned it to multiple classes. You can remove students from the table below. You can also filter the table by the question difficulty. If you want to get a better look at what your students have put into their tests, we can pop out a student set of tests. You can see exactly what they've put in as well as the correct answers. You also have the option to generate a PDF version of their test. We also have the option to export this table as a CSV and a PDF. Now let's have a look at report 2. So I'm going to scroll to the top, change the report type to results by skills, and then we can regenerate the test that we're after. Again, when I click on Generate, the table of results will appear at the bottom of the screen. Now this will display how your students performed at a skill level, or you can adjust your view so that you can look at it by the textbook or the curriculum and average the scores by the different levels. Again, you have the option to export the table as a CSV and a PDF, and there are additional filtering options. Now let's move on to report 3. I'm going to select test comparison and regenerate my report. Now, as soon as I click on Generate, what we can see here is how my students have performed on their pre/mid test to their post test. Again, you've got the option to toggle what sort of content you would like to refine your report to, and the results will dynamically update. You can also filter by the question difficulty. You can remove the trend lines. And there is also a data set which you're able to export as a CSV or a PDF. Now let's move on to report 4, performance by student. This will detail how each of my students have performed in their pre/mid test as well as the post test. It'll show you how they've performed in a particular section. It'll show you how they fared against the class average as well. Again, you have the option to adjust the view by using all the filters just over here. So you can remove students, you can order the students, and you can aggregate your results. Now let's move on to report 5. Score versus time taken. Because student tests are timed, we're able to display how students have performed against the time taken, as seen on screen here. Again, you've got the option to filter the results by the class, by the student. You can display the average lines, and also we have a data set at the bottom which can be exported as a CSV or a PDF. Now let's move on to the 6th and final report, growth versus attainment. So this will show you the amount of growth versus the results for the post-test for each of your students. Again, it'll highlight the averages, so the average growth, the average score. You'll have the options to filter the results using these filters over here. And at the very bottom, we've got another data set which can be exported as a CSV or a PDF. Now that brings us to the conclusion of the demo. Thank you so much for watching.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the live part of this webinar on Cambridge's new Diagnostic Assessment tool. You've been watching a pre-recorded demo of how it works, some basics relating to mathematical skills and the intentions of the diagnostic system, a little bit about the reporting that is connected to the diagnostics as well, which is all new for this particular system. I'm here with David Greenwood. David, as Caroline mentioned at the start of this webinar, is part of the author team for our New South Wales Cambridge Maths series for years 7 to 10. He has been a very important part of the design and content creation of the diagnostic questions and how the reports work and all of those kinds of things. So David and I will be here to help answer any questions you might have. You can put them through the Q&A functionality within your browser, and David and I will get to them from when we can. As Caroline mentioned at the start, the webinar is being recorded and will be made available to all attendees. So if you missed something or you want to rewatch it, you can do so at a later date. David, let's talk a little bit about the intentions of this entire system, what it is that we were trying to do when we first started talking about it. Apart from being a Cambridge author, you are a teacher for a very long time. You have run the maths department at your school for a long time. You've been aware of other kinds of methods for doing this, whether they are methods that schools have tried to implement themselves using Excel spreadsheets and taking content from different places, as well as other options that are out there. What were your intentions when we first started talking about this? I mean, there were certain things that we wanted to do in terms of flexibility and so on, but there were also things that we wanted to steer clear of. So what were some of those?
Well, I guess we wanted an easy to use and reliable tool in the first instance for teachers to seek feedback on key skills that relate to the syllabus or to their topic lessons or unit of work. So I guess not necessarily designed to replace an entire set of assessment for a unit of work, which might include investigations or other tests that might require, say, handwritten solutions, but something that will be relatively quickly deliver reports and potential follow-up work relating to the key mathematical skills within the syllabus. We also wanted something that teachers could use to run diagnostics at any point, very easily during the unit of work. So not necessarily right at the start and right at the end, although that might be a popular choice for this tool, but something that had the flexibility where teachers could use it just to test just a small number of mathematical skills as well. And then also to provide teachers with that instant reporting, which clearly decides what are the key skills that have been completed well, and which skills require attention for maybe the individual or for the whole cohort in that school.
Yeah, and I mean, flexibility is a real key part of this entire thing. I just want to mention a few things about some terminology that you may have seen in the demo and some of the introductory slides. I'll get David to talk about a little bit more about what mathematical skills are in a second, because they really are fundamental to how this entire system works. But just a few other terminology things to mention. Unit of work obviously is a unit of learning that is entirely up to you in terms of how much content is covered and how long, how many weeks of work that is. That's entirely up to you. It could be 2 weeks, could be an entire term, whatever it is you decide to do, that's totally fine. Or whether you decide to go by the structure of the textbook and consider a unit of work half of a chapter or entire chapter, something like that. Those are all totally fine. Within that, when you're doing your testing, VJ, who was running the demo that you watched earlier, used the term pre or mid tests. That really is just a name for any type of test that is done during the unit of learning prior to a pre-test. So pre/mid test is a name. It doesn't mean that that is either a pre-test or a mid-test, or a mixture of both. It's any test and any number of tests that is done during a unit of learning prior to a post-test. So just going back to this notion of flexibility and flexible models, a model could be one pre-test and then a post-test at the end. Or it could be one pre-test or a mid-topic test in the middle of a unit of learning followed by a post-test. Or it could be more regular testing that happens during a unit of learning. Those are all what we would consider pre or mid tests. We just couldn't think of a better name for that. So I just wanted to make that clear. David, just on the notion of mathematical skills and the amount of content here, perhaps let's talk a little bit about what is a mathematical skill, and when you looked at the syllabus and you were considering the structure and how our textbooks relate to the syllabus, what went into the planning for how to determine what would comprise a mathematical skill?
Yeah, so look, key skills are identified by considering both the content of the syllabus, the outcomes, as well as what's in the textbook at the same time. So within the text, it would be looking at the key ideas, what's in the examples, what are the examples trying to cover, and let's look at all the exercises as well, and cross-reference that against the syllabus, the New South Wales syllabus and the Australian curriculum, if you like, as well. So every example in the text should correspond to at least one or more skills, especially in the latest editions, I must say, where because of this tool, we're able to reflect on what key mathematical skills the textbook was covering, mapped against the curriculum. And so that gave us a license, if you like, to make refinements to the text so that our examples did, in fact, cover all the key skills that we recognised with the help of the curriculum.
And that's very sorry to interrupt, Dave. I was just going to emphasise that not only are the mathematical skills extremely closely aligned with the worked examples, but also, particularly with these new editions for New South Wales, they are very, very closely aligned with the learning intentions that are present at the start of every lesson in the textbooks, and also the success criteria checklist at the end of chapters as well. The mathematical skills, worked examples, and those two things I've just mentioned really do, they are all paying attention very closely to each other.
Yeah, and it was interesting that we ended up coming up with around about 200 or a little bit more skills per year level. So that's how it fell. That, of course, includes skills right across the curriculum, but also right across the textbook, where the textbook might revise key skills from the previous year, we've made sure we've got those skills in that year level. So if teachers felt that some earlier skills needed to be covered, they are there. Those revision skills, if you like, are there in that year level. And also those skills that correspond to the extension sections, sort of the higher level pathways, if you like, they are there as well. So that sort of offers that flexibility for teachers to select a range of mathematical skills without necessarily having to call upon a different year levels resources.
Yeah. I'll talk a little bit about the nature of the diagnostics content for stage 5 in particular in a minute, but we've got a few questions that have come through here. VJ, I think you're there, so if you are, I'll throw this one over to you, and we can talk about this one. So this is a question from Natalia S. How do the I don't know responses show up in the in the results and the reports?
It's a good question. So from the student perspective, they're treated as incorrect, at least for the user interface. And for the teacher reports, there is a specific key that highlights which answers were answered incorrectly. Oh, sorry, as I don't know.
Exactly. So they are, for the purposes of diagnostics, we introduce this to try to minimize the effects on the data of students guessing. So that's why that option is there. But it does show up in the reporting, but it's also treated, certainly not treated as a correct answer. It's treated as a 0, essentially. But there is a little tag there to show that a student has selected I don't know. Another question, if you forget to do a pre-test diagnostic, can you still generate a post-test, or is this usually done through the task manager? I'll get VJ to help with this one as well in a second, but the answer to that is it is the way that this works, because the post-test comprises the aggregate of the family of tests that are done within a unit of learning, whether it's a pre-test or a pre-test plus a certain number of other in-topic tests. It is important to try to remember to get your students to do those tests, and the reason that it works like that is so that there can be a clear comparison from one point to the next point. But VJ, is there anything you'd like to add to that? You know, what would the recommendation be if a teacher has forgotten to do testing on some particular content, and they sort of got to the end and they need to do a post-test?
I mean, there's a couple of options there. Ideally, it would be great to remember to assign all the pre-tests. But if you have already generated the post-test and you've forgotten that you haven't covered a particular topic, you've got the option to delete the post-test so that you can create another pre-test and then generate the post-test again. And then the other option would be, which is not ideal, again, you could opt to print out the pre-tests, which students can do by hand. But again, then you don't make the use of the reporting feature.
Yeah, you could also, I mean, this thing is so flexible. You could just create a pre-test from one bank one, as if it is a post-test, but you wouldn't be able to get the comparison data. Thanks, VJ. Another question. So this is one for us, David. How does the progress quiz in the textbook align with the online quizzes? Do these have questions from the pre-test bank, or are they different? Okay, so there are a couple of things going on here. So the progress quizzes in the textbook are distinct. They are their own thing, really suited and designed for the content that is in the print book. In terms of the online quizzes, so depending on what we're talking about there are 3 differentiated quizzes in every lesson, so that's a separate thing from this diagnostic assessment. Those are distinct, but just to make the point clear, these questions in the diagnostic assessment tool are all unique to this tool. They don't exist. They're not repeated in any other part of the suite of resources, if you like, whether it's the test generator or progress quizzes or the quick quizzes, practice quizzes in every lesson. The content that is in this system is all unique. Anything you want to add to that, David?
Oh, not really. It's just that the progress quizzes are more or less fixed according to the preceding sections in the textbook. Whereas, of course, the diagnostic tool allows us to just pick and choose whatever sections we would like. So there's a lot more flexibility, if you like, with the questions in the diagnostic tool.
Yep. Okay, a few more questions. So this one's probably for you, VJ, as well, and maybe for Caroline as well, perhaps. But if you can answer it, VJ, that's great. If a student is new to your class due to class movement throughout the year, does their data from your own school travel with them so that you, as their new teacher, can see their previous results? Or do you only see the results from your own class or class key? And compliments to Rachel on a very well-written question there.
So it's a really good question. So if the student is moving across schools, unfortunately, the data will not be available from school to school. But if they're traveling between classes, the data should be available for them.
Yep. Okay, a question from David. Do the students see their results? Okay, so they don't see the details of their answers to specific tests, and that was a very deliberate decision. We did not, particularly because of the nature of diagnostic assessment compared to other kinds of assessment, we were really careful not to have a situation where students, particularly students who are average or below average, are inundated with data that shows how poorly that they are doing. That is absolutely not what the point of this whole thing is about. On the other hand, what they do see, students of any level, they see a particular kind of report that summarizes how they're going in relation to mathematical skills. So more of a big picture approach. And as VJ mentioned in the demo earlier, the structure of that report that the student sees, that the teacher really is in control of as well, and sends out to students and sees it first, is that the structure of the report is that it starts off with things I can do well, things that I can improve on, and then there is a list of things that is actual actions that a student can take in order to make improvement. So instead of bombarding them with all the questions that they got wrong, all the things that they don't know, they're presented the information in a very curated way that the teacher sees first. And it's in the structure of here's what I can do, here's what I can't do yet, and here's what I can do about it. That was a very deliberate decision to do it like that, following on from best practice, I guess, that we've been hearing about, that our team uses, that we know a lot of our teachers use, that we've seen at conferences, at Mansfield conferences, and so on and so forth, more and more. Anything you want to add to that, David?
Well, I think you've covered it there. Like you said, we don't want to bombard them with just mediocre results. It's very much a tool for the teacher to control, and the teacher can obviously then set that follow-up work so the students feel like they can get something positive from every outcome or every test result.
Yep, that's exactly right. Just something else about follow-up work. VJ did cover it briefly in the demo. The nature of follow-up work is that there are a couple of ways to do it, and we didn't call it remedial work because follow-up work can apply to students of any level. It doesn't necessarily have to be things that they should know and don't know, depending on which level they're at. It could be things that they're already good or above average, but there still may be things that they can improve on. So follow-up work was the name that we gave to this whole thing. follow-up work is made possible by the fact that the mathematical skills are so aligned with the worked examples. And the way that our worked examples work within the print book, but in particular in the interactive textbook, is that you have a worked example, but you also have a demonstration video of someone showing you how to the best, the ideal solution for how to set out and complete that question. Following on from that, every worked example has a now you try question. So the nature of follow-up work follows that order. The fact that the mathematical skills are so closely aligned to the worked examples means that the questions that students may not be able to do are very similar to the questions that they would find in worked examples. And you as a teacher, if a student is really struggling with something, can point them towards the worked example, the video of someone completing the worked example, then a now you try question, which is identical in form to the worked example, and also the question in the diagnostics test that they may have gotten wrong. And following on from that, the follow-up work allows teachers to set a few more questions from the exercise that have been tagged as being identical in form as well. So that's how the follow-up work works. And one other thing about follow-up work, there is a wizard, as VJ mentioned. The wizard works by prioritizing up to a set amount of mathematical skills that the teacher chooses. It prioritizes mathematical skills based on the difference between a student's performance at that mathematical skill in comparison to their peers. So it begins with the mathematical skills that the student is doing worse at in comparison to the class average. Those are the first that are chosen, and then up from there. If a student, and if everyone is struggling, then you'll see that data as well. If students are above average, then the wizard reverts to a model where it just goes by raw performance, so from worst performance upwards. So that's a little bit about how the follow-up work works. Just one question on the downloadability of the data. This is probably another one for you, VJ. Does the CSV download for student data sets, including data for each student's attainment of individual skills, or just each test result? So could you talk a little bit about what the data that's available to download for each of the different kinds of reports?
So for report 1, which is the most granular report, you can get the raw data as a CSV for every student. So if you wish to do some computations from there, you can. In terms of the growth versus attainment report, it exports the data set. So that'll apply to reports 5 and 6. Sorry, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Reports 1 and 2 will have the table of results, which you can use in any way you'd like. They also come with the PDFs if you prefer that as well.
Yep, and one more thing on this. One of the reasons we wanted to make the data downloadable, we can't think of everything. I think we've got a really good suite of reports. Some are just about the data that comes from the tests, comparing that to mathematical performance against mathematical skills, and the syllabus. You can break down, average out against the different parts of the syllabus or the textbook and see how students are doing it. A higher view or a more granular view in comparison to the course. There are also reports that really focus on growth in different ways, but we can't think of every possible way that school may want to use this data. So you can download it and do what you want with it. Okay, this one's for you, I think, VJ. Is there any relationship between the assessment tab and the diagnostic tab? Does data communicate between both? It's from Elizabeth.
Another good question. At the moment, they are completely independent features, both from, I guess, a feature perspective as well as a data perspective. At some point in our roadmap, we are looking to provide a view for customers or users to see all assessment, whether it's diagnostics, tests, exams, in a single place. So at the moment, they are independent, but hopefully down the track, we can provide a solution that makes it easier for teachers.
Yep. Okay, David, let's talk a little bit about the different, we can see in the second dot point there that there are questions of different difficulty against every mathematical skill. So there are 5 questions per skill. Can you talk a little bit about what those difficulty levels are? What is an easy question? What is a medium question? What is a hard question?
Yeah, so 5 questions per skill. And then the skills being covered in each bank. And then, we mentioned about the 200 plus skills in each year level. So around about 10,000 questions altogether. But you're right, a ratio of 2 easy, 2 medium, and 1 challenging for each skill. So this allows schools to select a difficulty level that we saw in the video. I think there were 4 options showing from the options available. And this way teachers can decide, what difficulty level they would like their tests to be for their cohort of students. And so the idea was to try to hit the skill on all the questions, easy, medium, and challenging, but at the same time offer those 3 different levels. So today, for example, I was teaching distance between 2 points. And so as that is a clear skill that you might want to teach, say, at year 9 or year 10. And that easy, from what I can think of, the easy questions might be dealing with 2 points where the coordinates are all positive. So they're still touching on the skill, but they're not being distracted by the negative numbers from points in the other 3 quadrants. So we might draw upon those types of ideas for the easy. The medium skill, say at year 10, might involve a point with positives, but also some negative numbers in there as well. So you've got that skill of being able to handle the negatives there to cover the skill centrally. And then the challenging question might be using the same rule, but they might be given the distance and they have to confirm what one of the points was. And so that would be quite a challenging question, but still on the same skill.
Yeah, and we wanted to make sure that there was not only questions of different difficulty within each mathematical skill, but the allowance to choose a different mix of difficulties, because there are different approaches to what type of questions should comprise a fair level of diagnostic testing. Should there be any problem-solving questions in diagnostic assessment? There are different views on that, so you can have a discussion about that in your faculty and make a decision. As to the consistency of the questions the mix of questions that you set for your school and your different classes, that is certainly up to you, but it would be important to keep in mind that if classes are seeing questions of different difficulties, it becomes not as meaningful to compare data across classes if they're seeing different tests. So that's something to keep in mind. So if you want total consistency, it would be recommended to have a discussion, make a choice about the what type of questions you want in your diagnostic tests in terms of their mix of difficulties, and then be consistent across classes. But of course, this is all up to you. Okay, a quick question for you, David. Does the harder question involve a higher level of literacy?
I think naturally the answer would be yes, because sometimes those questions that relate to that skill might involve, it might be a multi-layered question, or it might be a worded question, or something that some might regard as being a slightly higher level in problem solving or reasoning, and therefore potentially a slightly higher level in literacy. Yeah, so that would be something to watch out for.
Yep. A question from Sabika, a good friend of Cambridge. And this one's probably for you, VJ. I can talk a little bit about it, but in terms of the what a user sees, it might be for you. Can the teacher see that the student has attempted any of the follow-up work? Would this show in the student activity report at all? Or would the only way a teacher know that the student has attempted the follow-up work is by setting a post-test and seeing the results? VJ, I'll throw over to you if there's any initial comments, and then I'll add some comments as well.
So to check, so I guess the intention here is that the improvement is seen through the post-test results, and we don't directly track the work that they've done within the diagnostics feature. Having said that, because the follow-up work is a part of the interactive textbook, you should be able to see it in the normal activity reports, and if they've done their questions online, if they've viewed a video, the same way you would normally generate a report. It is just that it's not surfaced within the diagnostic feature itself.
Yep, that's a good answer. And just generally, the intention of this was for follow-up work is, I mean, it facilitates sending and sending information and sending of actual activities to students, but more than that, it is intended to facilitate a conversation and try to get students to take a little bit more ownership of their own learning. The student-facing report is structured as to try and to facilitate that, and it's intended to facilitate an ongoing conversation about what work that a student could do to improve their performance. I just want to say something about the way that this whole thing works for the stage 5 content, given that there is a difference in stage 5 in the new syllabus compared to year 7 and 8. So obviously in the new syllabus, there's a set of core topics, and then there's a set of path topics. The path topics being tagged by NISA as suiting students who are looking to do or are needed for students doing mathematics standard, topics that are intended for students doing mathematics advanced extension. Some have a combination of those courses. In terms of the diagnostics content, if the content is core content, then the diagnostics questions are the same regardless of which textbook you're using. So if you're using the, let's just say, year 10 core and standard paths book, the lower level book, you're seeing the same diagnostics test questions as someone who would be doing the core content in the year 10 core and advanced extension path. So because the content is core, the questions are the same across the board, regardless of which textbook you're using. Having said that, the differences are in the follow-up work. So the follow-up work is still very specific to whatever title, whatever resource that the student is using. If they're using the year 10 core and standard book, then the follow-up work is specific to that title. So they'll see they'll be pointed towards worked example videos that are in their resource, same as Now You Try questions and any recommended exercise questions. That's how that works. In terms of the diagnostics question content for path topics, that is essentially a modular approach. So if there are those topics in the standard book, then you'll see questions relating to that optional path topic. If you're using the core and advanced extension path textbook, you'll see the path diagnostics content to suit that. So that's how it works at stage 5. We've only got a couple of minutes left. Let me just ask you a quick question, David, about the setting of tests before we hand back to Caroline to wrap things up. When a teacher is setting tests and they select the wizard option, what's the gist of how the wizard works? What were the intentions of the programming that has gone on behind the scenes to build that wizard.
Yeah, so obviously in the background, there's all the mathematical skills. And once a teacher has chosen the content, either via the syllabus or via the textbook sections, then all those mathematical skills are able to be chosen. So depending on the number of questions, the wizard needed to be able to balance not only the difficulty level ratio. So if a teacher's choosing, say, the balanced selection, that would be a ratio, I think, of 1 to 2 to 1, 1 easy, 2 medium, and 1 challenging. The wizard had to make sure that that we maximise the coverage across all the skills selected, regardless of the choice of difficulty level. So essentially, the algorithm is designed to prioritise hitting all the skills required, depending on the teacher's content selection, while also having the desired difficulty profile. And so the balance matrix makes sure that we're getting the widest range of skills covered, meeting the requirement of the content that's being selected. And we're not getting, say, 5 questions on one skill and then another skill not being covered if that skill is being selected.
Yeah, it's exactly right. It's to try and mitigate the effects of randomly weighting towards particular kinds of content or questions of a different difficulty and so on.
Yeah.
I just want to say a couple more things just before we close and hand back to Caroline for some closing slides. This is a brand new thing for Cambridge. Obviously, it's you can see from the amount of questions there. It really was a great deal of work to build. A lot of new functionality was required for this. And it is being made available as part of the online teaching suite. It's not some additional subscription model, or it doesn't cost anything extra. So I would just say, although we are very confident in how it works, in the thinking and the design that has gone into it, in the content of the questions, all of that kind of stuff. If you find that there are things that you would like to be able to do, but you can't, if it's not working in the way that is expected or that suits the model of diagnostic assessment that you would like to run at your school, please get in touch. Please get in touch with myself. I look after Cambridge's mathematics program in Australia. And I can help answer questions, or you can go straight to your sales consultant and help get your questions answered. But we're pretty confident that you'll enjoy using this, and it will be of some benefit to your mathematics program. Okay, thanks very much, David. So we'll pass on to Caroline now for some closing slides.
Okay, thanks, Scott, and thanks to everyone involved in this project. It is really exciting for all of us at Cambridge, but of course exciting for you all to get to use this and see the value that you get from it in the classroom. So we're excited to see how it all unfolds this year. And if you do have any immediate questions when you're actually inside the platform, there is a little help widget in the bottom left of your screen that you can access anytime as well. You can also reach out to your school consultant, including myself, as well as Deborah Wilson and Sabika Cummins. So you'll find their details on the screen. And again, for those who would like to watch this back another time or share it with your staff in the faculty, you will receive a recording of this webinar. So thank you all for coming along this evening and giving us your time, and thanks to VJ and Scott, and of course to our author David Greenwood. We are very fortunate to have them as part of our team. So thank you everyone, and good night.